Good evening. Thanks very much for joining us on India Business Hour. I'm Shireen Bhan. The headlines that we're tracking for you tonight. The Indian rupee sinks to a new low against the US dollar. $1 is now worth nearly 82 rupees. The currency has depreciated 3% just this month. Stock markets declined for the sixth day. The Nifty falls below 17,000. The Sensex hits the lowest level in 2 months. Bank stocks get battered. A surprise intervention in the money market by the Bank of England after the British pound plunged to historic lows. The Bank of England will buy long-dated bonds till the middle of October in an attempt to stabilise the market. The IMF has also warned Britain over its proposed tax cut, saying it will likely increase inequality. The government pulls the plug on the privatisation of Central Electronics Limited. The successful bidder is disqualified after failing to disclose proceedings against the company at the bankruptcy court. The potential privatisation of Pawan Hans is also in doubt after the Company Law Tribunal passed an order against the winning bidder. The Union Cabinet approves the extension of the free food grain scheme launched at the start of the pandemic by another 3 months. Sources say the Finance Ministry opposed the extension as it has fiscal implications of more than 44,000 crore rupees. That's CNBC-TV18 exclusive. External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar flags the delay faced by Indian professionals in getting the US visa at a meeting with US Secretary of State Anthony Blinken. The US-India Business Council says the delays are disruptive for business, urges the Biden administration to act. The US market regulator, the SEC, says Oracle's India unit used slush funds to bribe officials for business. This is the second time Oracle is facing bribery charges in India. The company says that conduct is contrary to their core values, promises to take appropriate action. Russia claims resounding victories in the referendums held in occupied provinces of eastern Ukraine, setting the stage for annexation. The US and the West call the results of the vote a sham. European nations also claim sabotage is the likely reason behind leaks in Russian gas pipelines. The government appoints retired Lieutenant Anil Chauhan as the Chief of the Defence Staff. The move comes 9 months after the death of India's first CDS, General Bipin Rawat. The government bans the Popular Front of India and its associates under the Unlawful Activities Prevention Act. The Home Ministry accuses the organisation of terror-linked activities, calls them a major threat to internal security. The race to become the next Congress president heats up. Sources say senior leader and former Chief Minister of Madhya Pradesh, Digvijay Singh, set to file nomination papers. So far, Shashi Tharoor is the only leader to have declared his nomination. And let's start with the Indian rupee, which continues to face relentless pressure. The rupee plunging to a new low today. Now, $1 is worth almost 82 rupees. All currencies, though, are under pressure as investors flock to the dollar since the US Federal Reserve started to hike interest rates. The rupee has now depreciated 3% against the dollar in this month alone. It's weakened by 9% since the start of the year. Lata's here with more on the money market action and what we can expect from here on. Lata.
It's actually a double whammy now for Asian currencies. It's not anymore talking only about US yields. We have to talk about China. The Chinese currency saw a much lower fixing today. You know, Chinese currency doesn't, it's not entirely market determined. The PBOC determines a midpoint and allows the currency to float around it. The new midpoint, which everyone thought would come closer to 7.16 per dollar, which was yesterday's close, came in at 7.22, which was quite a surprise. They actually allowed or enforced a depreciation. And so all Asian currencies are showing that impact. And of course, the rupee was no exception. Right from the word go, we started off at 81.90. What dealers tell us is that there is a persistent dollar offering, which they are guessing is from the Reserve Bank. And they are guessing that because of this offer, 81.94 is not getting crossed. Also, the rupee looks like a relative outperformer because at 81.94, it is about 0.3 lower than previous close. The Korean won is 1.25% lower than yesterday's close. The Chinese yuan itself is down 0.75 versus yesterday's close. So clearly this is, a worldwide phenomenon. And just to add, US yields overnight crossed 4%, the 10-year that is, which is a fresh 13-year high. And the US data came very robust. Consumer confidence as well as new home sales. New home sales were 28% higher than June, the July numbers, whereas they were actually expected to fall by about 0.05. So, strong noises coming from Fed governors who spoke, like Bullard and Evans as well. And therefore, the market now is not looking like there is any immediate peaking off of the dollar or bottoming out of the currency. At least for the moment, there's more to go.
All right, Lata, many thanks for joining us. Well, even as the rupee hits a new low for the fifth day, former RBI Governor D. Subbarao says the current macroeconomic situation is not as bad as 2013, that is when he was in charge of the central bank. Speaking with Lata, Subbarao said India does not need any special schemes to attract NRI deposits just yet. However, he's also cautioned that the twin deficits, that's fiscal and the current account deficits, do make India vulnerable to global shocks. Take a look.
In 2013, the rupee was under pressure. There was a lot of pent-up exchange rate pressure in the rupee. It was overvalued, suddenly bled. This time, I think the rupee is tracking fundamentals more or less. Like you said, this year, the current account deficit is expected to be 3 or 3.5% of GDP if it's going to persist. And it is going to come on top of fiscal deficits, which are high, not just the central government, but both the center and states put together. Fiscal deficits are still, I wouldn't say scarily high, but certainly quite high. That coupled with our current account deficit of over 3% of GDP certainly puts us in the vulnerable zone.
That is former RBI Governor D. Subbarao, and you can catch that conversation with him at 10 p.m. right here on CNBC-TV18. Well, the stock market's under pressure, declining for the sixth session. The Sensex today losing over 500 points, hitting the lowest level that we've seen in 2 months. And the Nifty down below 17,000 after losing over 140 points. Bank stocks battered in trade once again. Mid-caps, though, managed to relatively outperform the blue chips, but the index still ended in the red. Anuj joins us now to wrap up the day's market action. Anuj, specifically in the afternoon, a lot of selling pressure.
Well, the market's been in some kind of a free fall. It didn't look like that up until 2 p.m., but the last hour has been particularly brutal for our markets for the last few days. And today as well, there was a sharp move. In fact, from the highs now, the market has swiftly corrected big. In fact, the market leading index, the Bank Nifty, is now a good 10% of its recent all-time high. And the Indian market is now playing a fast catch-up with the global market after outperforming the global market in all the decline. A lot of heavyweights were under pressure, ITC, Reliance and HDFC, and the real big pressure came from the big banks, Axis, SBI and HDFC Bank. Metals as well under pressure, so names like Hindalco, JSW Steel and Tata Steel. This clearly is the global dollar trade which is playing out in the commodity market. And the level of risk off can be gauged by the stocks which were gaining today. And there were some Asian Paints, Sun Pharma, Dr. Reddy's, even Hindustan Unilever. So basically pharma and FMCG are now your defensive bets in this environment. What next for the market? Well, technically the market's broken down. It's below its 200-day moving average and very close to 200-day exponential moving average. That also looks like at 16,800 under threat. But the bigger point for the market is what's happening with the dollar index and the USD INR. For the market to stabilize, you need stability in the currency market. Till that happens, the market will be vulnerable for the kind of day that we had today.
Yes, stability is what the market is seeking. Anuj, many thanks for joining us. Here's a big global story. Surprise intervention in the money market by the Bank of England after the British pound plunged to historic lows. The Bank of England will now buy long-dated bonds till the middle of October in an attempt to stabilize the market. Meanwhile, the IMF has warned Britain over the proposed tax cuts, saying it will likely increase inequality. All of these measures are part of what new Prime Minister Liz Truss calls a mini budget. Here's more.
Just last week, the Bank of England had initially noted and said that they would do anything possible to kind of intervene in the market to get a sense of stability and where things might lie. Well, that movement has officially come, deciding to get into the gilt market then and deciding to try and find a way to stabilize things. That's exactly the wording then from the Bank of England in order to ensure then that the gilt market begins to stabilize. The market turmoil that we've seen has indeed followed on from just last week. Kwasi Kwarteng, the UK finance minister, putting out what he called a growth budget, which saw unfunded tax cuts of around $45 billion US, and that $60 billion proposal then, of course, for those energy price guarantees, it is said to cost around £60 billion for now and could go even further from therein. But this intervention into the market is said to stabilize things. It kind of gives a sense as well that the BOE, and which they've said, are going to then ensure that they do whatever is necessary, whether it be hiking interest rates a little bit further on, of course, to ensure that there is stability in the market and to get inflation back to around 2%. That is the primary aim, and that is what they will be following on from at this point. That market move has ensured that the pound sterling, which the pound dollar mark, should I say, which has certainly gone to those lows, continues then to get some sort of strength. But whether that has happened for the long term is still to be seen in the market.
Well, thanks very much. A fresh twist there coming in from the Bank of England. Now, back home, the government has pulled the plug on the privatization of Central Electronic Limited. The successful bidder has been disqualified after failing to disclose proceedings at the bankruptcy court. The potential privatization of Pawan Hans is also in doubt after the company law tribunal passed an order against the winning bidder. Sapna Das joins us now with the details. Sapna, another setback to the strategic disinvestment roadmap. I mean, these are small transactions, but it tells you that something is not right with the manner in which privatization, the process is being run.
Well, probably some strong headwinds here as far as Pawan Hans and in the subject in context at the moment. Of course, the CEL news, the government has officially announced that they're scrapping the deal. They have terminated the bid as well as the transaction. So that's the end of the road for that stake sale as of now. There are a couple of reasons mentioned. Of course, the strategic buyer had not disclosed the bankruptcy proceedings at the time of putting in their bid. That was found out later. So yes, definitely some loopholes have been thrown up, important loopholes, and going forward, or to an extent, probably the government is already taking these steps, and these steps are going to be dynamic. It's not that a particular transaction fails and everybody wakes up, but certain processes will have to be tightened. I think the rules for TAs and LAs in terms of closer scrutiny of bids and bidders, I think that will have to be tightened further. Also, in terms of further due diligence process, what else can be done? I'm 100% sure the government is already looking into it, because this scrapping of the CEL deal could actually be a kind of embarrassment for them, because this was something that they could have avoided. Similarly, in terms of Pawan Hans, yes, there is an issue again over there. At some point in time, we were given to understand that probably the Pawan Hans deal could be salvaged, but I think going forward, that is also going to go down the drain. But that's something that we have to wait and watch as the government comes out with this announcement. Of course, BPCL was a big one, but BPCL is a completely different context. So all in all, 3 strategic stake sales probably will go down the drain. At least 2 of them have done so.
All right, Sapna, appreciate you joining us. And as Sapna was pointing out, this might mean that some rules will have to be tightened. Due diligence by the transaction advisors certainly will have to be looked into, given what we have seen happen with both Pawan Hans and CEL. We told you earlier, it is now official, the government has extended its food grain scheme, which it had rolled out in April of 2020 during the COVID lockdown, and it's done so by another 3 months. CNBC-TV18 learns that the Finance Ministry had opposed the extension, but the Cabinet has decided to go ahead anyway. Timsy joins us now with more. Timsy, take us through the rationale behind the Finance Ministry's opposition of the extension being given to the free food scheme.
Well, even as Union Cabinet today has decided to give a 3-month extension to the Pradhan Mantri Garib Kalyan Anna Yojana, or the free ration scheme, we are given to understand from sources that when it comes to the stakeholders of the scheme, or to be precise, the Finance Ministry, they seem to have had a different view. Rather, the Finance Ministry, in a communication to Food Department last week, had advised to terminate the scheme. The advice was backed with warnings that the scheme will have adverse fiscal implications, as the implications are to the tune of 44,762 crores, and there are fiscal pressures due to Russia-Ukraine war, effect on fuel prices, and the rise in other subsidies. The other reasons that were cited by the Finance Ministry was that the pandemic has abated considerably, distress for which relief was given doesn't appear to be prevalent, and a continuation of the scheme over a long period of time may give an impression of its being a permanent or an indefinite continuation, and hence it might be difficult for the government to stop the scheme later on. This, coupled with other concerns of a possibility that there may not be adequate food grains to continue the scheme indefinitely, given the global environment, were also cited. And if not, at least government should consider a reduction in quantities of the distribution. thus clearly pointing out that the political call prevailed over the view of Finance Ministry when it comes to the extension given to the scheme.
Yes, that extension has been granted for the next 3 months. Thanks very much, Timsy, for joining us. The Cabinet has also cleared a 4% hike in dearness allowance for central government employees ahead of the festive season. The announcement will benefit 48 lakh employees and 67 lakh pensioners. The move is likely to have an impact of 12,800 crore rupees on the exchequer this financial year. Other corporate stories tonight. Indus Towers has warned Vodafone Idea of service closure if the company does not clear its mounting dues. Sources tell CNBC-TV18 that Indus Towers board flagged its concerns and is seeking a regular payment plan from Vodafone Idea. The Delhi High Court has granted statutory bail to former NSE CEO Chitra Ramakrishna and former Chief Operating Officer Anand Subramanian. The bail is over a money laundering case related to the alleged illegal phone tapping and snooping of NSE employees. The judge ruled that he was granting statutory bail as the investigation has not been completed within a specified period of time while the accused has been in judicial custody. External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar has flagged huge challenges that Indian professionals are facing in being able to get a visa for the US. Following a meeting with the US Secretary of State Anthony Blinken, Jaishankar said that both sides agree that impediments to the mobility of talent must be addressed.
On mobility, specifically visas, this is particularly crucial given its centrality to education, business, technology, and family reunions. There have been some challenges of late, and I flag it to Secretary Blinken and his team, and I have every confidence that they will look at some of these problems seriously and positively.
Well, that is the External Affairs Minister Parikshit Luthra standing by with more details. Parikshit, how long are the delays? What kind of impact is this having on businesses? And more importantly, how long before we see some change?
That's right. US and Indian companies have been flagging chronic processing delays, which are very disruptive for American companies. That's a word coming in from USIBC. US-India Business Council told CNBC-TV18 that recent measures taken by the US State Department to reduce waiting periods are not enough, and they are urging the US Congress and the Biden administration to do more to address consular delays. When asked about appointments stretching all the way to 2024, the US Embassy said they're gradually ramping up capacity to reduce these long waiting periods. They said the State Department has a plan to aggressively staff the US mission in India to their highest levels ever. The embassy said they anticipate all positions to be fully staffed by the summer of 2023. The US mission in India is upgrading its consular facilities and also opening up a new center in Hyderabad. They're also expanding interview waiver authority to previously issued applicants as well. The backlog, the embassy says, is because of restrictions on consular services during the pandemic, despite which a record 82,000 student visas were issued between June and August. The embassy also said it has processed 500,000 applications from workers, students, tourists, and crew members. The US Secretary of State has said that the US government is very focused on resolving these issues and explained the self-financing nature of US visa facilities. Sources have said that proceeds from visa fees are used for staffing and salaries of visa officers, and the staffing was impacted due to COVID lockdowns in the last 2 years. This is exactly what the US State Department is now trying to address with additional resources. Currently, all visa categories are seeing long wait times, sometimes extending to 2024.
Parikshit, many thanks for joining us, and you can catch our special on the US visa backlogs with Mukesh Aghi of the US-India Strategic Partnership Forum at 9:30 p.m. tonight. We also speak with Indian citizens working in the US to get a first-hand experience of the problems that they are facing. The US market regulator, the SEC, has imposed a fine of $23 million on tech giant Oracle for using slush funds to bribe officials in UAE, Turkey and India between 2016 and 2019 to get business. According to the US market regulator, Oracle India's sales employees used, and I quote, an excessive discount scheme for a transaction with a transportation company where the Indian Railways is the majority stakeholder. The discount approval was allegedly provided without getting documentary support. Approximately $330,000 was funneled to an entity with a reputation for paying officials. Up next, Xi Jinping appears in public on Chinese state TV amidst rumors and speculation over his absence. A special report from Beijing when we return. Check out some of the other headlines tonight. The government has appointed Lieutenant Retired Lieutenant General Anil Chauhan is the Chief of Defence Staff. The move comes 9 months after the death of India's first CDS General Bipin Rawat. The government has banned the Popular Front of India and its associates for 5 years. In a statement, the Home Ministry said PFI and its associates have been involved in unlawful activities that have the potential to disrupt public peace and communal harmony. The affiliates to PFI have called the ban draconian and have hinted at taking legal action. The race to become the next Congress president heats up. Senior sources say that former Chief Minister of Madhya Pradesh, Digvijay Singh, is set to file his nomination papers. So far, Shashi Tharoor is the only leader to have filed his nomination. The Enforcement Directorate has arrested Sameer Mahindru, the Managing Director of Indo-Spirit Group, over the Delhi excise policy case. He is the second businessman to be arrested in the matter after former CEO of events company OML, Vijay Nair, was arrested. In international news, Chinese President Xi Jinping made his first public appearance since he returned from the Shanghai Cooperation Organization summit on the 16th of September. His absence had sparked wild rumors and speculation. He is all set to get a third term when the Chinese Communist Party leaders gather for the annual Congress in a few days. Eunice Yoon reports on the mood in Beijing ahead of the party Congress.
We're only weeks away from a massive political reshuffle, an event where President Xi Jinping is seen as taking a third term. So everything right now seems to be geared towards stability. So making sure the markets are stable, making sure the yuan is stable, and also in terms of Taiwan, the tensions between the U.S. and China over the island are stable as well. And in fact, we had President Xi Jinping appearing on state TV recently just to kind of send the message that he is still in power, he's here. He was walking around with all of his top leadership to make sure that there isn't any question about his position.
Eunice Yoon reporting there from Beijing. There is a new star in India's electric car galaxy. Tata Motors has launched the Tiago EV, another addition in its lineup, with an introductory price starting 8.49 lakhs. This EV variant is India's most affordable electric car so far and the first to be priced below 10 lakh rupees. Shailesh Chandra, the head of Tata Motors passenger vehicle unit, told my colleague Parikshit Luthra he expects the EV variant to draw more than 35% sales in the Tiago portfolio.
We are also expanding the number of cities in which we were selling our EVs from 90 to 179 in the next few months, and that should also act as a force multiplier for penetration of Tiago EV and other EVs also that we have in our portfolio. I feel that the penetration of Tiago EV will be better than what we have seen for our past cars. So I imagine it can be anywhere between 30 to 35% kind of a penetration that I see as far as this product is concerned, but we can be surprised also if it goes beyond that.
Well, that's Tata Motors. And staying with the auto sector, let's now talk about SUVs. From a modest 13% share 7 years ago, SUVs today command 38% of the passenger vehicle market. What's fueling India's romance with SUVs? Mangala Malu and Ritu Singh find out on Mad About Markets.
According to Database, the global sport utility vehicle or the SUV market was valued at $35 billion in 2021. It's expected to drive all the way to $105 billion by 2029. What does that mean? A compounded average growth of nearly 15% annually for the next 7 years. So from $35 billion goes all the way up to $105 billion. Come to India, we've traditionally been a small car hatchback sort of market, but the rise of SUVs has been phenomenal from low teens to now around 38% as of FY21. We're number 4, but growing very fast.
That is as of FY21, and we're closing the gap with some of the larger countries because the share of SUVs in the overall passenger vehicle market, it was just about 13% when you talk about 2015, just a few years back. Now that started to grow steadily, and as of 2020, it was 29%, but cut to 2021, in just 1 year, it went from there to all the way to 38%, like Mangalam was just pointing out. And this year, the share is expected to have improved even further. Now, this is reflected in what is the growing share of SUVs in the overall car sales in India. Take Hyundai, for instance. I mean, that is one of the companies to talk about because, from 2015, when SUVs had a 9% share in their entire sales, now it accounts for almost half of the entire total. And come 2025, it gets even better because SUV sales are expected to contribute 55% to the overall sales.
2015, SUVs used to contribute only 13.5% to the overall Indian auto market. And that is when we launched the Creta. And I may say with all humility that, that set the ball rolling as far as SUVs in India is concerned. And if you see in 2022, 41% of the auto sales are now coming from SUVs, which is more than hatches even.
We have found in recent years, the SUV segment has been gaining a lot of traction. In fact, over the last 3 years, it has increased from 26% to more than 40% now and growing.
Well, the explosion of the SUV market. And before we wrap, shares of Apple under pressure. This after a Bloomberg report claims that the company has told suppliers to bail on plans to increase iPhone 14 production. Demand for the new models failed to spike as high as anticipated, so Apple is proving to be a drag on Wall Street. And with that, it is time for us to wrap up this edition of India Business Hour. Thanks very much for watching. Stay tuned. News continues here on CNBC-TV18.